Yeah.
Welcome back to the Gridiron Expert. The Cincinnati Bearcats are coming off back-to-back 11-win seasons, and we're just one win away from possibly playing in a New Year's Six bowl game under head coach Luke Fickell. Today we take a look at their 2020 schedule as the 17th ranked team in our way too early top 25. So in 2019, the Bearcats went 11-3, 11-2 in 2018, 11-3 in 2019. One of those losses came at the hands of Ohio State, while the other two losses came at the hands of Memphis, once in the season finale and once in the American Athletic Conference game, both of those losses by combined 15 points. Had Cincinnati defeated Memphis in the American Athletic Conference title game, there's a very good chance they could have been the Group of Five representative in the Cotton Bowl instead of Memphis. But nonetheless, the job that Luke Fickell has done at Cincinnati is truly unbelievable. I don't think anybody saw this type of success coming from him, especially in a very short amount of time. This year, going into 2020, he has possibly the best team in the American Athletic Conference. And that's saying a lot, considering they lost so much, especially on the offensive side of the ball. They do return their quarterback in Desmond Ridder, but they do lose their running back in Michael Warren, and they do lose 5 of their top 7 wide receivers from last year. So, Ridder is going to have to play much better and much better consistently at the quarterback position, and the Bearcats might be relying more on their defense that allowed just 20.6 points per game last year. Nonetheless, if they can build chemistry early, Cincinnati certainly has the talent and the schedule itself to line up for a potential New Year's Six bowl bid in this upcoming season. So we take a look at their schedule real quick. We open up easy games in theory to kick off the season. Austin Peay, Western Michigan. We think Cincinnati should, in theory, take care of those games. Then things start to get pretty interesting in Week 3 at Miami, Ohio. And a lot of people would look at this game, they'd brush it off, and it's certainly not going to be a game on many people's radar in Week 3. But the Red Hawks are the reigning MAC champions. And I can guarantee you they were not a preseason favorite in 2019 to go on to win the conference. The Bearcats took care of them 35-13 last year, but with a lot of returning starters for Miami, Ohio this year, and this game being on the road, this is going to prove to be a very early test against their second straight MAC opponent, facing off against Western Michigan and then Miami of Ohio. So interesting game there. And then a road game at Nebraska, which I think many are going to mark down as a loss. They'll chalk that up as a loss. And I'm here to say, not so fast, while we are not predicting any of these games. None of these games up here have been predicted by us. Those will come later. Nebraska is a team that needs a big year in year 3 under Scott Frost, but is also a team that as of late has struggled against what are classified by many as inferior opponents from the Group of Five. You know, the Cornhuskers beat South Alabama last year, but only beat them 35-21, and a lot of those touchdowns coming on special teams or defense. And then in 2018, Nebraska lost to Troy at home, 24-19. And then in 2017, Nebraska escaped Arkansas State just 43-36 at home, and then lost at home to Northern Illinois 21-17. So they have lost some games to some Group of Five opponents, and they have had some major scares from Group of Five opponents in recent years, really each of the past 3 seasons for Nebraska. And with the talent that Cincinnati returns, with the coaching staff that Cincinnati has, this is a game Nebraska cannot afford to overlook, especially as they start to get into the bulk of conference play going into October. So a very, very interesting slate in the month of September for Cincinnati. This Nebraska game could be a trendy upset pick for many. Cincinnati then dives into American Athletic Conference play. They open up against South Florida, brand new head coach. A lot of unknowns there for the Bulls. Cincinnati barely escaped them 20-17 last year, but luckily getting them at home this year. So there's a chance, you look at this, Cincinnati could be, 3-1, more than likely for many, 3-1, maybe 4-0 if they pull up the upset against Nebraska. But 3-1 or 2-2 even is possible going into the month of October and facing off against conference opponents. They then get a bye week before facing off against Tulsa, who they defeated by 11 points last year, but a Tulsa team that was really, really competitive in many games. Took SMU down to the wire. Hung with Cincinnati here, a team that really found some offense over the course of the season as the season went on. So luckily they're coming off a bye week, an early one at that, but coming off a bye week, but traveling to Tulsa, certainly not an easy place to play and certainly not going to be an easy test for a team that really seems to be improving. This first half of the schedule for Cincinnati, to me, is not that bad. Yes, many will look at the Miami, Ohio game and the Nebraska game, both on the road, as tough games and maybe potential losses. But compared to the back half of the schedule, it's really not that bad. It really isn't. And if you lose to Nebraska or if you lose to Miami, Ohio, maybe you lose to both, they don't affect your status in the conference standings. They don't affect that. This back half of the schedule here is the most important for Cincinnati by far. These last 6 games will define the Bearcats season and make or break their season, whether or not they can make a New Year's Six bowl game, whether or not they can make a return appearance and the American Athletic Conference Championship. It will all be decided right here in the back half as they face some of the best teams within the American Athletic. And we begin with a road game at SMU. So you've got back-to-back road games here at Tulsa and then at SMU, who luckily Cincinnati avoided out of the Western Division last year. Cincinnati being in the East, SMU being in the West. And for a long time, it looked like SMU could have been that team that made a New Year's Six bowl game. Had such an explosive offense. The job that Sonny Dykes did down there in Dallas, truly unbelievable. Well, now Cincinnati has to take a defense that might be one of the best in the conference to go up against one of the best offenses in the conference, led by Shane Buechele, who was great last year for the Mustangs, on the road. It's going to be a very tough game for Cincinnati, many that could consider to be a loss if SMU can kind of continue the success that they had last year. They started off so hot and then kind of petered out towards the end. They had a loss to Navy. They had a loss to Memphis. Got annihilated by Florida Atlantic in their bowl game. So will they kind of right the ship and start strong in 2020? They then face another dangerous offensive team in Memphis. Cincinnati has this game circled on their calendar, Halloween night potentially, facing off against Memphis, the team that kept them out of a New Year's Six bowl game, the team that defeated them 2 times last year in consecutive weeks, because that season finale and conference championship game were just 1 week apart. So now Cincinnati gets to host the Tigers after they had to play Memphis in 2 consecutive weeks. This is a game that, kind of like last year, could be a preview of the American Athletic Conference Championship game. But this is a game that you hope for Cincinnati their defense isn't run down in, because Ryan Silverfield's Tigers are going to be super tough to beat and super tough to stop offensively. Brady White, Kenneth Gainwell, DeMonte Coxey, quarterback, running back, wide receiver, the trio, the triplets, big 3, going to be so tough to stop for Memphis. But the one thing that I do say about this is for Cincinnati last year, the big game on their calendar was Central Florida. It's a Friday night game at home against Central Florida, a game that decided the East Division ultimately. And Cincinnati got that win. Now they are facing probably one of the toughest tests. Their biggest match, the one they have circled on their calendar, is Memphis, and it's back in Cincinnati. It's going to be a very big game, and having home field advantage could go a very long way in that one. So Memphis here. Then they play Houston, a team they only beat by 5 points last year, a team that I expect to take a major step forward in Dana Holgerson's second year. Then they play East Carolina, a team that almost beat Cincinnati last year. Despite the struggles that they had, East Carolina only lost 46-43 to the Bearcats last year. So each of these teams, with the exception of SMU, giving Cincinnati tough tests in the 2019 season. Memphis, 2 losses. Houston, a 5-point victory. East Carolina, only a 3-point victory. Luckily, they get Houston and the Pirates at home. Memphis at home, even. So they get a 3-game homestand before closing out the year with back-to-back road games at Central Florida and at Temple. This Central Florida game, while we talked about Memphis, how it's one of the biggest, this Central Florida game is even bigger because while that's a revenge game, this game could decide if Cincinnati can get revenge in the title game or not. This game against the Knights will more than likely decide who wins the American Athletic Conference Eastern Division. And once again, we know Central Florida is going to boast one of the best offenses in the conference, maybe even in the entire nation, led by Dylan Gabriel at quarterback. And this game being on the road, like Memphis is a revenge game for Cincinnati, this is a revenge game for Central Florida. To try to get revenge on the Bearcats for the loss they were handed in Cincinnati last year. It's coming right here at the end of the season, and if both these teams meet their expectations, without a doubt, this will decide the division. So a huge, huge game there, and unfortunately for the Bearcats, it's on the road. And then they close out the year at Temple, a team that they only defeated 15-13 last year. So despite the 11-win season last year for the Bearcats, a lot of those coming by very slim margins. One-possession games, sometimes less than a touchdown. So big game at Temple here where once again, even if they somehow get past Central Florida, a loss to Temple could work in the Knights' favors if maybe the Bearcats slip up somewhere else in conference play and then ultimately lose that tiebreaker. So this back half of the schedule, guys, absolutely brutal for Luke Fickell and his squad. First half, not that complicated. Certainly can't overlook anything, but these last 6 games are going to be the most defining of the season and will ultimately decide whether Cincinnati can meet this 10-2 record, as the FPI is predicting very, very early. Have them going 10-2 on the year, and I'll give you a heads up, one of those losses is to Nebraska. So they only have them losing one conference game, which would ultimately more than likely be good enough to get them into the conference championship game. But this back half of the schedule will decide if this prediction can come true, or if Luke Fickell and the Bearcats will take a major step back from those back-to-back 11-win seasons that we've seen from them over the past few seasons. It's going to be very, very interesting. The American Athletic Conference, many consider to be a Power 6 conference, and the talent that we see from the Bearcats this year, the talent that we're going to see from the majority of their opponents this year, certainly proves that to be true. So guys, thank you so much for watching us here at the Gridiron Expert on YouTube. Make sure to continue to like, comment, and subscribe, and check out everything we have for you down in the description below. Exclusive college football news, content, updates, and offers that you do not want to miss. So make sure to check it all out. And once again, thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time right here at the Gridiron Expert.